Okay, so we've been to the jointer, we've straightened out one edge of our board. Now we need to look at our surfaces. Our surfaces are not completely flat. They're a little bit pitted or rough. But we also want to take this board to a different thickness. Okay, so right now I believe it's at 1 inch. Let's say our project, we need it to be 3/4 of an inch or 5/8. So that's what we're going to use the thickness planer or the surface planer for. Okay, let's talk about the parts of the planer. Right here we have our table. On the sides of our table we have our guide bars. Inside of the planer, up top here we have a roller on front that has teeth. That is our in-feed roller. And then on the back we have a roller that's smooth. That is our out-feed roller. The in-feed roller obviously pulls in the board. The out-feed roller helps push it out. In the table we also have some bed rollers. In between all those rollers there is a cutter head, kind of like the jointer. This one goes all the way across, 24 inches. Big cutter head has the knives mounted on it. When we send our board through, the in-feed roller pulls it into the cutter head. Cutter head trims off some of the board, and the out-feed roller pushes it out. Okay. On the front here is our on-off switch. Over on the side we have a stop all or an emergency stop, which I'll show you how to use in just a minute, and a wheel that raises and lowers the table. Also on the front of the machine there's a ruler that tells us how high or how low the machine is, or the table is, excuse me. So the first thing we need to do when we go to use the planer is we need to measure our board. So you're going to take your tape measure. Hopefully by now you've learned how to measure. And we're going to measure our board. It looks like we are at 15/16. So we're going to set the height of the table to that measurement. I'm going to lower that down. There's 1 inch. So I'm going to bring it up to 15/16, and that's a good starting point. Now I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate this. I'm going to send my board through, raise the table up 1 turn or 1/16 of an inch, send it through again, and I'll keep going until I get down to my thickness, let's say 3/4 of an inch. So I'll send it through twice on one side, flip it over, raise it up, send it through twice on the other side. Okay, here we go. I'm going to turn on the dust collector so I don't make a mess. As I'm planing my board, I want you to watch where my hands are. The other side. Now in that 3/4 where I want to be my final pass, go ahead and send it through one time. Side of the machine, we have an emergency stop or a stop all. If something's going wrong, turn off the machine, hit the emergency stop. If you're just done, turn off the machine, let it coast down, and walk away. Let's only use this if there is a problem. A chunk of your board is broken off, it's inside the planer, or it's making noises you know it shouldn't make. Go ahead and use that emergency stop. Okay, now we have our board. Surfaces are flat and relatively smooth. It's down to the thickness that we wanted. And depending on the project, it could be any thickness. 3/4 is pretty standard. But you know, if we're building those boxes, those dovetail boxes that I've shown you, you could be planing down to 5/8. Just really depends on your project. Okay, let's talk about safety. First thing I said, I asked you to watch where my hands were when I was planing the board. I set the board on the table, used the palm of my hand to push the board in. You do not need to have your hand on top of the board. You don't need to have it on the side. You do not want to put your hand over the table. There's no reason to. Set it on the table, palm of your hand to push it in. Let that in-feed roller grab your board and pull it into the planer. As soon as it grabs it, you don't have to touch it anymore. You can come around and catch it on the other side. You don't want to get your fingers wrapped around the bottom of that board. A couple times I sent the board through, you notice that it kind of hopped up a little bit. Well, if your board's shorter and you have your fingers wrapped around it and it hops up and comes back down, it's now on top of your fingers. It's bad. Okay, this machine is a big, powerful machine. If you get your fingers under your board, it's not going to stop because your fingers are getting smashed. Okay? Again, set the board on the table, palm of your hand, push it in. Not a good idea to watch your board being planed. You really can't see much. But if something were to break off of your board, like a knot or something, it's going to come back out this way. And if you have your face down there, it's not good. It's going to leave a mark. Never ever reach underneath this hood, planer on or off. You do not reach under there for any reason. Like there's rollers, there's a cutter head, on or off. It can cut you. Do not reach under there. If something gets caught under there, like a chunk of your board breaks off and it's stuck under there, stop the machine, use the stop all, come get me, and I will gladly come help you. Other safety items. If your board gets stuck, this will happen every once in a while. You're sending your board through, it starts feeding through like it's supposed to, and then it stops. Okay? Don't panic. Don't turn off the machine. Okay, what's happening is that in-feed roller has lost traction on the board. It's spinning out. It's not grabbing your board and pulling it in. Simple as fixed is just give your board a little nudge. Okay? Maybe push it to the side a little bit. Most of the time, it'll then pull through. If that doesn't work, then you can go ahead and turn off the machine, stop it, and come get me. But I would say most of the time that works. Now, of course, if it stops here, which it usually doesn't, you're not going to put your hands up here and try to push it in. Okay? You could use another board, push it, or you can turn it off and come get me. But usually it's within the first 3 or 4 inches, it'll stop. And then you just give it a little help. Okay? Other things. Minimum length of any board to be planed is 12 inches. We don't plane short little chunks of wood. The reason we don't do that, these rollers are spaced 12 inches apart. If you stick an 8-inch board in there, it's going to pull it in. It's going to go past the in-feed roller and not contact the out-feed roller, and it'll be floating in there. Okay, most likely it'll just sit there. But there is a chance that it could get sucked up into the cutter head, damaging the planer, throwing wood everywhere. We don't plane anything shorter than 12 inches. I'll never have you cut a board on the upcut saw to a rough length shorter than 12 because we really can't do anything with it. Can't join it. We can't send it through the planer. We can't send it through the sander. Probably shouldn't be cutting it on the table saw. Just remember, anything shorter than 12 inches, you really can't machine at all. Okay? Other than that, the planer is really pretty safe. Make sure that you're setting it up correctly. Make sure you know how to measure. If you don't, if you're not doing well on the measuring quizzes, let me know and I have a few tricks to try to help you out. Definitely want to make sure you're setting this to the right height. If you set the planer up to the wrong height, you're going to take off a big chunk of material. You're going to ruin the board and possibly damage the planer. Okay. One more time just to review. Set your board on the table. Use the palm of your hand to push it in. Let that in-feed roller grab it and pull it through. You do not need to have your hand down here. You don't need to have it on the side of the board trying to guide it in. Just let it grab it and pull it through.